I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out and just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill, then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome into an all-new episode of the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us as we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of combat sports. A lot of action this past weekend. We had a fight card down in Georgia. First time for the BKFC down there in Atlanta. Great card. We'll break that down in just a minute. Later on, we'll talk about the Lights Out Extreme Fighting 21 out in Long Beach, California. Some grid title fights there. We'll talk about who prospered in those. We'll even talk about some of the action that happened after in the ring, not involved with the fight that was actually going on, but one that's going to be coming down the pike in the future. We'll also hook up with Keith, the rock star Richardson, the former bantamweight champion of the BKFC, got himself back on the winning ways down there in Atlanta. Talk to him about what he has coming up, what he thinks that fight should get for him if he gets that title shot again. Let's talk about his very action-packed weekend, because he wasn't just fighting himself. Right after there, he took a little trip and supporting his teammates. So we'll get into all that with the rock star. We will also recap what almost became a fight in Philly. There will be fights for the BKFC there next month. At the end of January, there will be KnuckleMania 5 in Philadelphia. They had the press conference there last week between Eddie Alvarez and Jeremy Stevens, a bunch of other fighters, especially a lot of the local Philly fighters there in attendance, and things got ugly. There was some serious words exchanged back and forth. Probably could have gotten a fist if not for the boss man standing in between. So we'll talk about all that, and then we'll also hook up with Donavin Morris from Lights Out Extreme Fighting, talk about the fight that he just had this past weekend out there in Long Beach, and then close it out by touching on some of the fights that are going to be happening this weekend for the PFL in Europe. That's right. They are still back in action after we just had their great title fights out in Saudi Arabia. They will be fighting in France for the Europe Championships. Very good reason to pay attention to those, because you never know who will be the champion down the ways for the PFL in the general, PFL, as we saw with Dakota Ditcheva. So we'll talk about all that today on the Combat Sports Report. But let's get right into it. Let's talk about what we saw down in Hot Town, Atlanta, Georgia, BKFC 69 this past Friday. Great performance at the top, as we said, with our man Keith Rockstar Richardson, the former champion of the bantamweight division, getting back in there after that first loss to Blas, where he just got steamrolled, and it was a bad scene for him. We wondered what he would look like coming back for his first fight since that title loss. Well, he looked damn good. That's what he looked like. He was coming in there 4-1. Larimore Rasuno undefeated in the BKFC, but he quickly gets his first L. 21 seconds in, as you see him crumple like an accordion there. it was, a lot of action right away from Richardson. He was coming forward. He was aggressive early on. Lattimore had a nice, punch he landed about 15 seconds in, but that was about it because that combination, that flurry of punches there, which I think when we watched the replay was ended with a right hook, kind of / right uppercut by the Rockstar there. He threw some other punches as well, but I don't think they really landed. I think the big one was that right hand before he threw a left, right, left again. And you saw Lattimore just crumple there. Obviously, you knew once he went down, that was done. No standing 8 count needed. Fight was over. KO win for the Rockstar to get back on his winning ways. A great performance by him. Knockout of the night as well. I believe a performance of the night for him. He was one of the award winners. Could have been knockout of the night with that one, but there was one that was even better, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But still, 21 seconds, awesome way to get back into the mix and show us that he is still championship material for the BKFC. And we'll see if he gets that title shot. See if that's what he thinks he deserves off that fighter. Maybe if he needs one more to make sure that he is the true number one contender. Also, you had the welterweight fight between Joe Elmore versus Derek Finley. Of course, Elmore, local guy in Georgia. And because of that, might have got a little bit more favorable judging from at least one judge than he deserved. Loses the fight to Finley by split decision. 48-47 two ways. 46-49 for Elmore on the other card. I don't know if that guy rode in the same car to the arena with Joe or what, because there's no way in hell it was 46-49 for Elmore. Finley won the fight. I agree it was 48-47. Elmore, of course, always a tough guy. Early on, he won that first one. That first round, he came out strong. He had some big punches. He was aggressive against Finley, but for most of the rest of the fight, it was Finley coming back at him, kind of being the aggressor, being in the middle of the ring there, cutting it off. Elmore took big swings, but he missed on a lot of them. Finley was shorter, but he had that longer reach. It was a big advantage for him throughout this fight. 8 inches was the reach advantage, and it worked out great for Finley because it seemed like every time Elmore threw those big hands, Finley was able to get out of the way. There's some of those punches that if they land in the second, third, fourth round, maybe Finley gets put out. Maybe Finley, has to backtrack and he can't be aggressive like he was. And Elmore, is the one who's on the front foot and pushing his opponent against the ropes. But because of the extra length that Finley had, he was landing the bigger shots. If you look at the punch numbers, sometimes Elmore landed a little more. Definitely threw a lot more, but didn't land nearly as much. The percentage of him landing from what he threw was much lower than Finley. I thought Finley controlled the second, third, fourth round. The fifth round, the hitman was not going out quietly. You knew that. Even though he looked tired throughout the third and fourth round, the fifth round, he turned it up, had some big exchanges, came at Finley, got him against the ropes, got him in the clinch, landed some big shots, but it wasn't enough because of those 3 middle rounds, I think, for Finley. He wins the fight 48-47 on my card, won it on 2 of the judges' cards that same way. And he says afterwards that, the BKFC is bleeping dope. He loves being there, says this is where the real fighters are. So happy to be a part of it. Appreciates the BKFC, bringing him in there and, wants to go show what he can do and continue to make a run there in the BKFC, possibly get into the title contention. Now he is now 500 there in the BKFC, so he'll have more work to do, but he showed a great performance against Joe Elmore as the co-main event in Elmore's home turf. Then at bantamweight, you had Nate Mayhem Manis versus Nikki No Holds Bards. Their Bargos going against each other. It was both a debut for both of them, with, of course, Manis being a UFC vet, and he is the one who gets the standing TKO. Just 1 second left in the third round, beating up his opponent against the ropes enough that they said, you know what, that's it. They step in, victory for him. Another fight that we're highlighting, we talked to Nathan Rivera last weekend, last week on the show, and he was talking about the Rivera era. He's been talking that since he got into the BKFC, showed it once again. A unanimous decision by him, 50-44 on all 3 judges' cards. This is a guy who's come in there with steamrolling guys, minute and a half knockout. Under a minute and a half in both, I think it's 123, 122. So he talked about how he needs to show more. It's great to have the flash knockouts, but you got to see what you do in the deep parts of the fight. If someone drags you down into the trenches, if they drag you in the tough part, how do you survive? He didn't get dragged into any of that. He was controlling all 5 rounds, as you see on the scorecards. I agree 100% with those. He got the only knockdown in the fight, as you saw there against Justin Street, but it was all Rivera coming forward, setting the pace, looking to pick his opponent apart. Street almost looked, like he was afraid to throw at times. He was very tenuous, did not put out the big volume that we would expect from him and the aggression that he shows. Even after the first round, his corner said, you didn't throw a punch. What are you doing? So he did not turn up that extra gear like you would expect even later on. I think that it was all Rivera, gets the only knockdown and gets the easy victory for him. And, as we saw with his first fight where he handed out that envelope to Dave Feldman beforehand, and once he won, he opened it and said, welcome to the Rivera era. Well, he's making headlines, at least in his mind, as you saw the celebration afterwards where he sits on the stool, gets handed a pair of glasses, I guess to make himself look a little older, because then he pulls out the fake newspaper that he had printed with his victory on the front, as we see the video right now, just getting it from his corner and, making sure to put a little extra oomph on the victory by celebrating in his own style and reading about his victory in the newspaper, which, I mean, I guess they still print those in Georgia. Who knows? There's so many of those going away around the country, but somehow Nathan Rivera not only found one that predicted his victory, and he gets another win. Speaking of victories, Joseph Creer dominated David Sampson, 49-45 on 2 cards, 50-44 on 1 card. He gets the unanimous decision. We had talked about how that was going to be a big fight for both these guys. Now it sends Simpson to 2-4. Creer now 3-2 in the BKFC. A nice win for him to get back on his winning ways and get into a positive win column here for the BKFC. You also had an incredible knockout. I said Richardson was the knockout of the night, but I was wrong because he got beat with a historic knockout for the BKFC. Justin Watson versus Cole Farrell. Watch this one. Don't blink or you will miss it. Ready? Go. This is slowed down, by the way, because otherwise you might miss it. 1, 2, 3, boom. 1 punch on the face, 3-second knockout. A new BKFC record for Justin Watson. Congratulations to him. We've talked with other guys that have had, tried to set that record, that have gotten close. Well, now it's been obliterated. Good luck to anybody else ever trying to get one faster. Good job by him, and also a good win for Crystal Van Wyck, who came back with a unanimous decision win over Murray. When we come back, we'll talk to Keith Richardson here on the Combat Sports Report.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. What a great card this past weekend for the BKFC. First time in Georgia, down in Hot Town, Atlanta. Doing a great job down there. Put on some great action for the fans to reel them in. And one of those guys who made sure to put a punctuation on the night was the Keith's Rockstar Richardson. And like a true rock star, sometimes you drop an album, a new song, or a performance, and it's not your best, and people kind of get on you for it, but you got to come back stronger the next time, and he certainly did here with his latest fight. Joins us now. Keith, thanks so much for your time. And first of all, belated happy birthday. I saw the post on your social media. I love the birthday present you gave to yourself, man. Those Wu-Tang kicks were those were fire, man.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. I'm still a kid at heart. I gotta give myself some swaggy shoes and look good.
Yeah, those were definitely sweet. I'm sure everyone's jealous, I'm sure, around the gym of those. See the Wu-Tang on the back. That was awesome. Not as awesome as the performance you put on this past weekend, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But first, I want to take you back. Unfortunately, we'll talk about what happened before this. You had the title. You had a insane run through the BKFC last year, going from debut to champion in a year, just running through people. Then, unfortunately, you had the fight against Blas. It didn't go your way, and it was, a tough one to watch. Honestly, as a fan, sometimes, we're watching for the violence. That's obviously fighting, but the way things went down, the look at the end there, with how banged up you were from it. Tell us about the fight. What happened there for you? What did you see in there in the ring? And how did you recover from that over these past months to get back into top shape here and show us that you're still the rock star by rolling through Larimore?
It was one of those. It's one of those situations. I think, especially after the year I had, before that, where I went from debut to champ in 10 months, and I love being active. And then once I got the belt, it took 9 months to finally book a fight. The layoff, I think, kind of had an effect just because I'm pretty much stay in camp. I've got my own gym to run, so I don't stop. But it was hard to stay hungry for 9 months waiting to fight. Especially when I'm always training, the next fight is coming. And it was just one of those situations where, I got a little over aggressive. I kind of got caught up in, usually I'm a little bit more predatory. But I got into the mindset of where, I really wanted to, just drop Blas right off the bat. He was talking a bunch of smack, getting in my face, and I've had 45 professional fights, and I think there's only been 3 guys I just didn't care for freaking in the build up. And he was one of those. Threw a big shot, my shot missed by just a little bit. His shot landed, and then after that it was just kind of a blur. You get clipped in the temple with a good shot, and it just scrambles the brain a little bit. But I think part of it was also I fought where I barely I barely remember rounds because I've eaten a big shot like the Scoggins fight. I dropped him, then he dropped me, and then after that point I don't a lot of the fight was a blur. So it was kind of that situation, but also the way the ref stepped in, because I was still up and fighting, and he kind of slid in between us, and I didn't even recognize he had slid in between us. And at this point in my life, I've been fighting, in some regard for my whole life. I don't have a flight response, so I'm just gonna keep fighting who's ever in front of me. And instead of grabbing me, he backed up. So the fighter in me thinks I've got him on the ropes, and I'm looking to finish. And it just was one of those unfortunate situations.
Absolutely, it was unfortunate. Just like you said, wasn't your night. Sometimes you get caught, and then things all kind of mushed together there. But we're glad that now you have come out of it the other side. You're doing well. Was there anything that you had to do different between then and this fight? Obviously, did you take some time off? You said about basically training for 10 months straight before that. Did you have to take some time off and just sit back and be more of a coach and a gym owner than a fighter for a while? Or, were you able to recover pretty quickly after that night?
No, I was able to recover pretty quickly. I don't think I really had that bad of a concussion. Because I think the damage came from impact instead of your head getting snapped back and stuff like that. The shaking of the brain is kind of what causes a lot of those bad brain injuries. I did have to take some time off from hard sparring and stuff like that. I got yelled at by some of my coaches, but nobody can stop me from training, especially when you own the gym, so I got right back to work. After that fight, I was a little pissed off. I felt like everybody had all right, well, he's finally past his prime. Everybody kind of counted me out and stuff like that. there's a difference between training hard, which I always train hard, and training hungry. And like, after I got to the mountaintop, it was hard to, like, especially for such a long time, it was hard to train hungry for so long. So as soon as I faced that loss, like, up until that point, I hadn't lost a fight in 6-7 years. So, when you're standing on top, like, it's hard to train hungry. But as soon as I felt that sting of defeat, like, I was hungry and ready to go.
Yeah, difficult to sometimes go from the hunter to the hunted. That's what you were, but now you're back in the hunter position where you're more comfortable, it seems like, and ready to go. You've had this fight against Larimore. You talk about being aggressive and, being powerful and dangerous, and you were certainly that. 21 seconds to finish him off. You had one punch that was good. Other than that, I think it was the right kind of hook uppercut that you landed, knocked him down, folded him like an accordion. Were you expecting to come out so aggressive and finish him like that? Or, was it just the way that things went?
Sitting back a little bit, feeling things out, but like right off the bat, like I saw everything coming, and like I could tell he was kind of nervous, and he was going to be punching like out of kind of nerves. And then as soon as I threw like the first punch and landed, and like I threw the other one that missed, but he backed himself against the ropes, which is generally something that you don't want to do with me, because I'm really good at closing you off and then throwing from there. But it was one of those things where I didn't initially plan to be so aggressive off the bat, but the openings were there, so I had to take it.
You certainly did. You made the most of it and get back on the victory side of things here with the BKFC. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, continue talking with the rock star Richardson after his great win over Larimore down in Atlanta, Georgia.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
I'm just happy. I'm happy to be back in here. I'm happy to open up Georgia, and I'm happy to get the knockout. Still look pretty. I don't care if I got to wait one fight, but I want my belt back. It's gonna be back around my waist. Watch your step. I'm just happy.
That was Keith the Rockstar Richardson right there after his win down in Atlanta, Georgia, getting back in the winning ways in an impressive way of doing it. 21 seconds, he gets the KO against Michael Larimore, the previously undefeated BKFC fighter. Keith, right there, you talked about wanting that belt back. You talked about it in the ring as well. I'm sure you're hungry to get back at Blas after, not liking him before that fight, it not going your way, there's got to be even more desire than before the fight to beat him. Do you think that should be the matchup you get right away? Do you think you deserve that off the one fight? Or do you think they're going to put you in there with maybe a top contender fight against an Ibarrola or something like that?
I think my credentials speak for themselves. I think I've earned that shot, and I don't think most guys want to fight either one of us. Me or Blas. But I know I'm willing to fight him. I know I want to fight him. Right now I'm the number 1 ranked contender. I think the fight makes sense. I'm ready to get that redemption shot. So I couldn't see anybody else getting it, but I don't care. If I've got to fight my way through somebody else, fine. Just put a body in front of me. The only thing I don't want is the weight.
Anytime, anywhere, anyone. That is Keith Rockstar Richardson right there, of course. That's the way you've always fought in the BKFC. That's what got you to the top, and now you're trying to work your way back there. What do you see? You talked about the first Blas fight, about how you think you're a little over-aggressive maybe, and walked into his shot. I mean, he's a guy who is very aggressive himself. He's been a lot of quick knockouts because he is so aggressive, just pouncing on people. What do you think would be different? What do you think you would have to do different in a rematch in order to get your belt back?
Simple adjustments, and not controlling the distance a little bit more, applying the smooth pressure, just doing what I normally do, not chasing opportunities, just waiting for the opportunities to present themselves, staying in people's face, keeping my defense up, and just making him make mistakes, making him get uncomfortable, and just touching him. All I got to do is touch him. I know the type of power I possess. I just got to start. I just got to land.
Well, I'm sure that'd be a great Christmas gift to you and many of your fans to see that rematch being brought about by the BKFC. Maybe we can get it for KnuckleMania 5 or in the coming months after that, hopefully for the BKFC. But there are plenty of great cards coming up that we can put that together if they're down for that. But people thought you looked happy in that clip that we just showed of you backstage after the win. I mean, you had an even better weekend after that. Right away, jumping on the jet and heading out to Vegas to support your teammates. I saw you out there for UFC 310, living it up, hanging out with Clay Guida and others out there in Vegas.
Yeah, I got to, I stayed up all night and just hopped on a flight for Vegas. Had to watch my boy Brian Battle fight. There was a big victory for him. I had a great time. Got to hang out with a lot of the guys from Alpha Male that I used to train with a lot. Especially in my MMA days, I used to do a lot of my camps out there with those guys. Chad Mendez, Danny Castillo, Coach Joey, Clay, just great guys, but freaking savages too. So it's great to see them.
They certainly are. Those guys are tough dudes. They were leading, back in the WEC days. They seem to rule that. I've known Uriah Faber for a long time, so a lot of great fighters come out of that camp. And then, speaking of training partners, people that you've been with, I heard that before his last fight out in Spain, Tony Soto, Loco Soto, has been training with you as well. What's it been like getting that nut job in camp and working with him?
Oh man, I love Tony. He's just a fun dude to be around. Great dude to train with. He's one of the best guys in bare knuckle right now. Being in his corner for that last fight in Spain was an amazing experience, and just being ringside for such an incredible fight. Hell, I've either been in the cage or ringside for the last 3 fight of the years.
He put on a great performance. Nothing that he should be ashamed of in defeat. Nothing that you should have in your previous defeat. And now right back in the winning ways in the title hunt. Thanks so much, Keith Rockstar Richardson. Appreciate you joining us and look forward to seeing you back in there soon for the BKFC.
Appreciate it. Yep. Hopefully back real soon.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill, then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on Sports. Let's continue to talk BKFC because, we just had these fights this past week, and we almost had fights on Tuesday down in Philly because, it's Philly. So what would you expect when you get a bunch of fighters in Philly together and start talking smack at each other? Now, there was only 2 fighters there who are actually going to head-to-head, and they almost came to blows before we even get to January, where we will see KnuckleMania 5 in Philadelphia, the first time ever that the BKFC will be in Pennsylvania. And, of course, if they're going to be in Pennsylvania, they're going to be in Philly since that is where they are based and located. And many of those guys have come up through the fighting world, including Dave Feldman, whose father was a Hall of Fame trainer of boxers in Philly area, who himself was a boxer in the Philly area, him and his brother, and who, concocted the BKFC from Philadelphia. So if you're going to be in Pennsylvania, you knew they'd be in Philly. They will be January 25th. We are looking forward to it. It should be an awesome card as we start to see some fights filter out over the past couple weeks, and I'm sure we'll get more and more coming out over the next couple as we get through the end of the year here in 2024 and start 2025. I'm sure everything will come out in full force, and we will find out exactly what this card will be from top to bottom. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we can make it down there as a show and go check out BKFC in person for the first time. But in attendance, you had Dave Feldman, you had Eddie Alvarez, of course, Philly guy, local guy, but he was fighting Jeremy Stevens, who was also there. Taylor Sterling was in attendance. She'll be fighting on that card as well, which Dave Feldman announced, and a bunch of the local talent there in Philly that will be filling out that card throughout it. And we found out a bunch of their fights as we continued, not only through the presser, but also through the broadcast down in Atlanta this past weekend. So Dave Feldman opened it up talking about, how special a day it was for him and for the organization, having grown up there, having come up there, having gone through his dad's career there, his brother's career there, how, when he thought this up, the goal eventually was always to get it to his hometown in Philly. That was going to be the ultimate, thing for him. I'm sure plenty of people, when you get into combat sports, it may be to get to Vegas. It may be to get to Madison Square Garden in New York. But for a guy who was born and bred in Philly, having this card there in January 25th is the highest honor for him, and he is so excited about it. Talked about what it's been like to grow the organization there, and also announced an initiative that they're going to be doing there to try to help the city of Philadelphia called Put Down the Guns and Pick Up the Fists, where, even though he said he's a very big supporter of our Second Amendment rights and people's, their ability to own firearms, that there are just too many bad guns on the streets of Philadelphia, too much violence. We've seen a number of shootings over the last year that have gone down there, and some very bad violence at times in Philadelphia, as we've seen throughout the U.S. with gun violence. And that they are going to be doing things where they are going to offer for people to turn in guns, to get bags of toys around Christmas time, to get tickets to KnuckleMania 5 and other things as well. So they are trying to take part in this initiative with the city of Philadelphia to try to curb gun violence a little bit more by taking some guns off the streets and getting people to try to turn them in for rewards through the BKFC. Well, hopefully they are able to do that and have a positive impact on the community with this initiative. But he also mentioned some of the fights that we had not known about. Of course, we knew it was Stevens and Alvarez. Once they announced that, that was the first fight. That is the main event. That is what they're leading off with. He also mentioned that they would be having Bryce Hall versus Baby Slice, Kimbo Slice Jr. Of course, we saw Bryce Hall for the first time at last KnuckleMania for the BKFC, the influencer who, had a so-so mediocre, weak boxing career. Going into the BKFC last year, I thought he was going to get smoked, but no. He beat G the Cutman. He had a great performance, so you got to give credit where it's due. Now he is coming back against Kimbo Slice Jr., Kevin Ferguson Jr., the former MMA fighter who actually fought in Bellator, 3-3 in his career there, and of course is the son of the infamous Kimbo Slice, the man who, maybe was a precursor to some things in the BKFC with his, his fights in the streets, the backyard brawls he had down in Florida before he would eventually get himself an MMA career in the Ultimate Fighter, in Strike Force, where he would do things to try to make himself legitimate in the fighting world and had some success. And now his son is trying to do the same and live off that moniker and make himself a big name in fight sports as well, as he now joins the BKFC. I'm sure if Kimbo Slice was still alive, this would be the perfect organization for him. Unfortunately, he isn't, but hopefully his son can carry that mantle and do a great job as he fights Bryce Hall. We'll also have a fight between Taylor Starling and Beck Rawlings. As we said, she was there, and Feldman announced that would be the fight there. We'll talk about her comments in just a minute, but started off, of course, with the two good guys at the top. And Eddie Alvarez, Philly's own, started things off after Dave Feldman talked, as far as the fighters go, talking about how he was so happy to bring his career back to Philly, that this is the only way he would be back in Philly was with the BKFC. He had his great time in MMA, his long career, had done great things there, both Bellator, the UFC. But thanks Feldman and the BKFC for bringing him back to Philly. He said he started fighting in the streets of Philly, as we know. They call him the Underground King because the guy used to brawl in the streets of Philly. That, he said, I used to do this for free. Now I get paid. Well, he's going to do it again, this time in Philly, in front of his hometown fans. And he says once he walks through, that entrance, there's going to be no one that can beat him January 25th. Of course, the guy who thinks he can beat him and made sure to tell everybody in attendance there is Jeremy Stevens, Little Heathen, who, of course, had his own UFC run, has done great things there, and has come through with some great fights in the BKFC as well. Now he's going to be fighting Eddie Alvarez on his home turf. He had some choice words for both Eddie Alvarez and his home city.
A war with Mike Perry. He got his face caved in by the second round and he quit. It's just like Philly. It's a great place, right? But you guys are runners up. You're second best. You guys will always will be. And the thing that's going to be different January 25th is we're going to find out what I already know, is I'm the baddest in the bare knuckle right now, and he's going to find out what I already know and certain of.
Bold words from a man in Philadelphia now, as a man who was born, bred, and lives in the tri-state area in New York City. I mean, I always love some good Philly trash talk, as those are most of the teams I hate throughout my life. But I also know, be careful what you say in Philly about Philly. Jeremy Stevens has no problem saying that right to their faces. And Eddie Alvarez even told him, he's like, listen, this city has a way of humbling you. Either they'll do it or someone else will. And he's saying that he is glad that he gets to be the one to do that. He's looking to do that. These guys face off, of course, as you are prone to have when you have these kind of press conferences. And they almost got into it right here. They almost had the whole fight happen right in front of our eyes on this press conference dais, getting in each other's faces. There's some words, some shoving. They really have the bad blood going, and it is going to be an awesome main event for KnuckleMania 5 in Philadelphia. Can't wait to see Little Heathen versus the Underground King in Philadelphia at the end of January. Can't wait. Going to be awesome. Also, you had Taylor Starling there talking, as we said. She talked about the fight against Beck Rawlings. She called Philly one of her adopted cities. Said she's had a bunch of them, so I don't know. She said this is one of the places that she's living. Said it's crazy that she hasn't been on KnuckleMania cards since the first one. That's where she made her debut, put on one of the most memorable performances in the BKFC. Somehow has not been back on KnuckleMania since. Says it's time to rectify that and has respect for Beck Rawlings. Says she's awesome, but also says she only fought Christine Faria and Britton Hart. I mean, not like those are any slouches. Those are two champions in the women's division. So if you're going to only fight the best, that does say something about you. But now she says it's time to give her a fresh face and then rearrange her face. So she's looking forward to fighting Beck Rawlings and putting on another great performance at a KnuckleMania. And we'll see if she can do that. Also, some of the local talent you had there, Pat Brady, the heavyweight who just made his BKFC debut this year, I believe up on the Connecticut card, talked about how he loves it. You know, now that he got this taste, he's looking forward to doing it again, and announced himself that he will be fighting Zach Kalmus, the Shark. So it's going to be Brady versus Kalmus. You know, he talked about how these two guys just like to brawl. It's going to be a great fight between them. And that's a fight made for Philly for sure. You got New England versus Philadelphia. Going to be awesome to see that one on the card as well. And then also Pat Sullivan, another interesting face to have there. The former minor league hockey enforcer, now making his BKFC debut, talking about how he grew up how he lives actually right behind the arena. They had the press conference. He just walked there and has his lip messed up from fighting in the streets of Philly. So he'll be on that card as well. Plenty of great fights that will continue to be announced. We even found one out on this card in Atlanta this past weekend. Heavyweight title on the line. Going to be awesome. We've been waiting for this one. Finally, we get it coming up at KnuckleMania 5, where the belt will be defended against Big Ben Rothwell. Can't wait for that one. Mick Terrell Rothwell, we've been waiting for a while. It's going to be a KnuckleMania 5. No better place. Great press conference. Can't wait for those great fights. Can't wait for it all with the BKFC. When we come back here on Combat Sports Report, we'll switch gears and talk to Donavin Morris after his fight at Lights Out Extreme Fighting this past weekend.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. They had a great card out there in Long Beach, California this past week, and now we tried to hook up with this guy before the fight, Donavin Morris. Unfortunately, signals got crossed, but we had to get him on, talk about some of the interesting stuff he has going on. When I watch this guy's Instagram, see the travels he's doing, the things he's doing to help kids as well. We got to bring on Donavin Morris right now. Donavin, thanks so much for taking out the time and joining us. Appreciate it. Let's talk about the fight. Didn't go your way. You lost the decision, unfortunately, this past Saturday. Tell us how the fight broke down for you, how you saw it in there in the cage as you unfortunately lost to Jesse this past weekend.
First, thank you guys for having me on, man. It's a blessing. That was a good intro. I like it. But it happens. He kind of got me out of my game a little bit. I wanted to go out to knock his head off, and unfortunately, kind of went out of my game plan. I kind of felt obligated to knock him out. Because nobody really likes that guy. I don't really like him too much, but fair play to him. He came out there, he executed his game plan, and he stopped what I had to do. But the first round was pretty interesting. I feel as though I won the first round. I stuffed most of his takedowns. I didn't really see unanimous. I could see split, but it is what it is. I'm back. I'm gonna be back probably February or March, and we're gonna do it again. Just keep the ball rolling. So.
Yeah, it's one of the only times in your career you've gone deep. Most of your fights ended in the first round in your amateur career early on, and even your early in your pro career where you are now. So it's tough. They're not always going to go your way. It's one of the toughest things in MMA, I think. Everyone talks about, we talk about boxing, undefeated records, I think mean a lot more than MMA because there are so many ways to lose that it's, sometimes just not your night, as you said, but you're gracious in defeat there. And what are some of the things that you take from that fight? Was there any cardio issues you need to deal with for longer fights going forward? Was there, you talked about stuffing the takedowns early. Was it something that was just harder to do later as you started to get tired? Or were there, other things that maybe holes in your game that, going back and watching the tape now, you think you have to make sure you work on before your next fight next year?
It is touching on what you said, like, it is a blessing that I was able to even go through rounds, because you're right, most of my fights have ended like pretty early, so it was cool to see, like, all right, like, oh, like I can do 5 minutes, 3 rounds. Like, I didn't even feel tired. I felt more tired doing my Muay Thai fights when it's only 3-minute rounds Muay Thai, 5 rounds of that. So I actually felt fine. Like, I didn't really even feel cardio, just normal fight fatigue. As far as like the wrestling and the takedowns, that was on my part. I abandoned all my footwork. I was just kind of trying to rush them head on, and that's what I did wrong. But the cage, I feel like the cage kind of saved them a lot. I would sprawl, and then I would stuff his face, but then my back is to the cage at that point. So it's like he would double shoot. And so I think maybe I come to I think what I need to work on is just to be able to create more openings, in my jiu-jitsu. I think that I could have took a little bit more chance with my jiu-jitsu. The first round, I was definitely taking a lot of chances. I had 3 submission attempts the first round, and I seen stuff open up in the later rounds, like I think the third round, I seen a ninja choke open up. I went for that, but I definitely could have been a little bit more risky. So I know next time I'm not, forget playing it safe, you know what I mean? Just make it happen. So it's a learning experience.
It certainly is. And, that's one of the toughest things in MMA, especially when the judging, like you said, you didn't see it necessarily being unanimous, but, when you talk about those openings, that jiu-jitsu, sometimes when you're on your back, automatically the judge sees it as them winning. But, if they're not doing anything, you're throwing those sub attempts, that's more aggressive. That's more, pushing the action than just laying on a guy. But too many judges don't know that, having not have been there, having come from the world of boxing. So that is something that, still seems to be evolving in the world of MMA, and hopefully we can get there at some point. And hopefully, we'll see you use more of those in the future in your return whenever you come back for Lights Out Fighting, hopefully early next year, like you said. But, you talk about your Muay Thai base. You talk about, some of these fights you've had before. Now this is your second fight in Lights Out. Hopefully we get a third and even more. What has been the thing to draw you to Lights Out? What do you like most about the organization, having fought for them now a couple times here?
Oh, I love Lights Out. They treat me well. Sean Merman, he's a great promoter. We have a matchmaker who treats me well. Everybody treats me well, and just the setup, just where they're at, just the environment, I just love it. The production, I kind of like the small intimacy of it. It's a vibe, definitely. Like, everybody that has been to my fight, all my supporters, they say how much of a show it is. It's with a lot of different events, it just seems more so like as you just going to watch fights. This one seems more like a show, and I really love that Lights Out brings that, and they really they promote me. They really post me a lot, and they showed me a lot of love, and I'm really looking forward to fight for them again. Definitely.
Speaking of treating people right and showing them love, tell me about the work you're doing with I Fight Bullies and what your involvement with them and what you guys are trying to do in the battle against treatment of people the wrong way, treating people right, of being nicer and all these other things that we don't see with our youth too much these days, unfortunately.
Definitely, it's all about a confidence booster. I think that kids need to learn how to defend themselves to be able to have enough confidence. Bullies, they tend to attack the weak. You know what I mean? They try to look for easy targets. So, just teaching kids martial arts and how to be able to just, not even just little boys, little girls as well, how to just be young men and women to just walk with your head held up high and not be ashamed of who you are. Like I grew up getting bullied for, I used to have bad skin, bad eczema. Kids used to bully me, but that's what made me into a fighter of who I am today. You know what I mean? And it really brought me a lot of confidence. It forged me to the man I am. And I do always go out there with that little chip on my shoulder. You know what I mean? But it's good to instill young in kids of confidence. Confidence is everything. So yeah, so we just want to just spread that word of bullying is not cool. Like I fight bullies. You fight bully, you don't necessarily have to even fight bullies like this. You can fight a bully by going out there and being great. You can go out there and fight a bully by winning. So that's more the message of it.
Sometimes winning at life is the best victory against them. Donavin Morris, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you back in there soon. Keep up the great work and enjoy your travels. I saw you in Fiji, in Europe. You're living the life, man. Enjoy it. And can't wait to talk to you again soon with Lights Out Extreme Fighting.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I'm actually not even on a side today. Yeah. And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid as we wrap up another episode. Thank you so much to our guests that joined us today. Of course, Keith Rockstar Richardson getting back on the winning ways in style. 21-second KO to show that he still is the top contender in bantamweight and maybe should get another shot at his title. We will see if that's the way the BKFC goes with that. Otherwise, I think a great fight. Him and Ibarola for the top contender would be a great fight, but him versus Blas would be a great one as well. Can't wait to see what Nate Shook, Dave Feldman, and the rest of the BKFC brass decide. Also good to meet Donavin Morris and learn about him as we got to talk about him and his bully initiative after his fight at Lights Out Extreme Fighting 21. Unfortunately, did not come out on the winning end of things, but that is the way things go sometimes in MMA. Even the best fighters don't usually hold that zero very long. There are very few in the history of MMA who remain undefeated throughout their career, and Donavin Morris will not be one of those, but we look forward to seeing him bounce back and get to his winning ways hopefully next time he fights for Lights Out, and hopefully we'll see that early next year. As he said, looks pretty good, didn't take too much damage, so can get right back in there once Lights Out wants him to go. Great to talk to both those guys, but now let's talk about some things that happened. First of all, we mentioned Donavin Morris. Let's talk about that fight card very briefly. Some of the results that we know that have come out for this card last weekend in Long Beach, California. Lights Out Extreme Fighting 21. Of course, we know that Morris unfortunately lost his fight by unanimous decision. You also had our man Blake Troop, who joined us a couple weeks ago on the show, call fights, then go in, change, and win fight. That's right. He got the heavyweight title for Lights Out Extreme Fighting. Now, when we talked to him a couple weeks ago, he talked about this being, a one and done, that this was a swan song final fight of his career, but now you are the champion of Lights Out Extreme Fighting. Let's see if that changes his mind. I mean, Sean Merriman talked about that when we previewed the fights with him last week, that he may talk about this being his last fight, but when you got that belt, that can reinvigorate you. That can make you want to continue and get this run going. It'd be kind of silly to take a vacated heavyweight belt, win it, and then vacate it again. We'll see what Bulletproof Blake Troop decides to do going forward. If he goes back to just focusing on wrestling, or if he continues his MMA career as the heavyweight champion of Lights Out Extreme Fighting. Great job by him in both regards, doing double duty, broadcaster and fighter. And also, you had another title fight that was happening on that card in bantamweight, where Jimenez defended his title in his fight for Lights Out Extreme Fighting. And then, if you thought the fight was interesting, if there was enough action there, maybe he decided he had some more energy, wanted to work out some more, as they brought in Ethan Ewing after the fight into the cage to talk about matching these guys up for his next title defense. And it was not pretty. We talked about how Stevens and Eddie Alvarez got in each other's faces at the BKFC presser. Well, these guys were definitely in their faces. But luckily for everybody, the fight was not done early in front of us on the broadcast because, when your founder is a former NFL linebacker, an all-pro linebacker, he could break things up pretty quickly, as we saw with Sean Merriman getting in between the two and making sure that we did not get that fight too early. You see these guys there, a little cordial to begin with, but the trash talk started. Things continued, and then eventually, as we will see later on, Merriman, he's there. He knows that things are going to get ugly. He knows that there's a possibility of this going sour, and eventually he has to use that physique and that bodybuilding that he's done to get in the middle. I mean, you think that's bad right there. That's nothing. It gets even worse. Sean Merriman basically had to literally pull these gentlemen apart, and we'll have to wait and see how the fight actually goes when they battle each other for that bantamweight title in Lights Out Extreme Fighting. Looking forward to seeing that one happen. But we have action this weekend as well. You may think that's the end of the year. Well, that is the last fight for the Lights Out Extreme Fighting in 2024. That is not the last fight for the BKFC. We have that card coming up right before Christmas, December 21st in Hollywood, Florida, where we got 2 title fights on the line. Can't wait to talk about that next week and break it down for you. But we also have titles on the line for the PFL this weekend. Europe style. PFL Europe will be putting on their championship card this weekend, Saturday, December 14th on DAZN from Lyon, France. There are a bunch of titles on the line. You have the Europe bantamweight title between Lewis McGrill and Evans and Alexander Luster. You have the lightweight final between Jacob Kazuba and Connor Hughes. You have the women's flyweight final between Valentina Scatizzi and Paulina Wizanuska. And then you have also the welterweight final for the men between Zandelli and Mischelli, as well as a bunch of other fights at welterweight, catchweight, and heavyweight on the main card, loaded with prelims as well. This is something to make sure you keep your eyes on and check these fights out, because you never know which one of these champions may join into the PFL here in the U.S. and maybe go for a title run there as well. As we saw, Dakota Tcheva last year was the Europe champion for the women. This year, an overall PFL champion. So keep eyes on the future by checking out some of these fights this weekend for the PFL. Thanks so much for everyone joining us. Can't wait to talk to you next week about everything going on in the world of combat sports on the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Thanks so much.